Right, perfect. So I wanted to start with a quick shout out to the happy hour team. So in addition to myself, we have Kirsten Keys. She's one of Sustainable San Mateo County's board members, and she is our liaison with the happy hours. Then we have Leanne Eberhardt. She is a longtime volunteer and active on many projects that we have. So feel free to also connect with her if you want to hear more about what it means to be actively involved with our organization. Alice Tian is one of our SSMC interns. And then we have Megan King. She is also interning with us and has been helping on quite a few happy hours for now. And she will be also, she's the one that created the trivia question and will guide you through the trivia questions tonight. So a quick few words about Sustainable San Mateo County. So you can find us at www.sustainablesanmateo.org. Our vision is a sustainable San Mateo County for everyone. So we're really striving to integrate social equity, environmental footprint, and then also a green economy. We really believe truly in systems approach. And basically, when you go to our website, we don't have the time to get into all of this here today, but in addition to our monthly happy hours, which bring together the community to explore different sustainability topics with guest speakers. So in addition to the happy hours, we have a few other programs. We have some programs that focus on measuring the sustainability performance of our county. That's the indicators reports program, and then also the dashboard project, which is going to look at how the cities are doing in terms of their sustainability performance and help them to identify areas where they can do even more. So we also have in addition to the measurement part of our programs, we also have a program that focuses on solutions. That's our Sustainability Ideas Bank. And basically, there is a lot of solutions out there. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And some of these solutions are easy to scale up or scale down, cost effective, and really make a difference on the ground. So you can find the current compilation of the Sustainability Ideas Bank on our website, and we continuously expand this resource. It's free for all to use, and especially geared for government entities and businesses. And then lastly, we also like to celebrate our sustainability champions, and we have an annual awards program. We just actually last month we just had our 2021 awards awardees. So you can also check on our website. We have information about this year's winners and also past year's winners. We've been doing this for over 20 years now. And last but not least, we also advocate for sustainability policies and initiatives that are in line with our vision. So anything from electrification of buildings and transportation, all the way to social equity and transportation for all. I wanted to quickly thank our sponsors. We have Alexandria Real Estate, we have Linkso Garden Material, Genentech, the San Mateo County Transit District, and the Sandhill Foundation. So thank you very much for your support. And then we also have Bohannon, the Carpenters Regional Council, Google Service by Medion, Peninsula Clean Energy, Spare the Air, and Western Allied Mechanicals. So that's thanks to all our sponsors that we are able to bring you these programs. And we have many, many more. So I think with that, I also wanted to take the opportunity to ask you to please save the date for the next happy hour in July. It's going to happen July 20th. And the focus in July will be on air quality and social equity. So stay tuned. We'll share more details with you soon. We are still putting this together, but it's going to happen again on July 20th, 5:30 to 6:30. All right, and I think with that, let me pass it on to Megan.
All right, trivia time. And I'm having some Wi-Fi problems, so if I cut out, bear with me. So if you're gonna answer trivia questions, you can hold up numbers, 1 for A, 2 for B, 3 for C, and so on. Or if you're able to do it, you can put your answers in the chat with the letters. So how many counties in California are currently under a state of emergency due to the drought that we're facing right now? And if it helps, there are 58 counties in California. So I'm seeing a lot of D's. That seems to be the most popular answer. Some B's and C's in there too. And the answer is D, 41. And San Mateo County is not currently under a state of emergency, and nor is Santa Clara County, but they have considered it. So our next question, what % of water in the regional water system that provides water to San Mateo County comes from the Hetchevchi Reservoir in Yosemite? A wide variety of answers here. I think we've seen all of them. And the answer is C, 85%. And the other 15% of our water comes from runoff from the Alameda and Peninsula watersheds. And our last question is, how did the rainfall in the Bay Area from 2019 to 2020 compare to the historical average rainfall from 1906 to 2020? Again, I see a wide variety of answers, but most people are guessing that it's lower than average. And some of you are right, it's E. The rainfall was 49% lower than the historical average, which is a little scary. Thank you everyone for participating.
Right, so I think we'll now, I'd like to pass it on to Kirsten. Oops. Hey, Kirsten.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everybody here tonight. And thanks for that great trivia round. That was, Megan puts those together and she did a great job. So thank you, Megan. We are so honored tonight to have Tom Francis with us. And Tom is just a great guy, and he works for a Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and you can see his bio up here right now. I had the honor of working, I was on the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency for about 7 years, and it was always a pleasure to work with Mr. Francis on that. And I want to give a little bit of background. As you can see here, he oversees Bosca's water supply management efforts, including our water reliability planning, supply acquisition, and water conservation. He is responsible for the implementation of the long-term water reliable water supply strategy, and he oversees the SFPUC's $4.6 billion Water System Improvement Program, or WSIP. You can ask him about that, on behalf of our Bosca agencies. And Bosca is really interesting because it's several agencies in many counties. And it was put together really to make sure that the San Francisco PUC didn't, kind of run roughshod over our rights to water in our area. And Tom can talk more about that as well. Prior to working for Bosca, Tom was a senior engineer for the East Bay Mud. So he's very familiar with this area since he worked there from 2003 to 2016. And Tom Francis has a BS in Civil Engineering from South Dakota State University. He's got an MS in Civil Engineering from Purdue and an MBA from Emory. So he is well qualified for all these topics and the hard work that he's doing to help us once again with a drought. When I served on BOSCA previously, we were in a drought for about 6 years, and you know, who knows how long this one might be, but it's always you know, a precarious time when you're in a drought. So we're really happy to have Tom. And before I let Tom start speaking, we always like to say, you know, it's our green happy hour, and feel free to share with us in the chat what you're drinking tonight if you'd like. And we're so happy to have everybody, and we will break out into group discussions, and so we can kind of dive in together on little smaller group discussion times after we hear from Tom first. So Tom, take it away. We're just very honored to have you.
Thank you, Kirsten. It was, as you know, I really enjoyed your time at BOSCA too. You did a great job, and it seems like you continued to do a great job for the county in your role here with Sustainable San Mateo. So tonight I'm going to talk about something that's probably on everybody's mind, and it was already previewed a bit by Kirsten. There is a drought, and I know that all of you are wondering, how is it impacting us? How are our water supply conditions doing this year, and what are we likely to see in the future if we continue to have a drought into next year and beyond? And so I'll just give a quick idea of what I'll be talking about. Kirsten did a nice job of talking a bit about BOSCA. I only have one slide just to give you a view of our area that we cover and the work we do. And then I'm going to talk a bit about where our water supply comes from. We kind of phrase it as the Hetchevchi system, the reservoir up in the Sierras, but there's more to it than that. But then I'm going to dive into these topics that I know are of most interest to you. What is our future water demand predicted to be? Again, what is our drought situation this year, and how are our neighbors faring? And what can you do to conserve water? So I have some slides that I'm hoping that most of you are already doing this, because I think this is a really, I don't know, conservation-centric group, but if not, maybe there's some new ideas for you. And I'll close by talking about some of the big projects that might be up and running in the future that will help us weather these, what could be even larger or more severe droughts. So quickly, BOSCA as an agency was formed in 2003. We're a governmental agency. There's 26 BOSCA member agencies, and in San Mateo, 18 member agencies are part of that 26. But we cover also Santa Clara, the northern part, as well as the southwest part of Alameda County. So our geographic reach is pretty broad. And we all have one thing in common. We all rely on the San Francisco Hetchevchi regional water system. Some of our member agencies have other supplies, groundwater or recycled water being primary supplies. But one thing we all have in common is that we either all use San Francisco water primarily, or it is a part of our supply. And that's kind of what bound BOSCA together. The regional water system is a pretty elaborate network of reservoirs and conveyance pipelines and tunnels and treatment plants. This graphic shows how Hetchevchi Reservoir, which is way up to the left, or excuse me, to the right, up in the Sierras, the northern part of Yosemite. It's the biggest reservoir in the system. It's where most of our water comes from, but there's other reservoirs along the way. We do have water that we can access in another reservoir that's owned by the federal government, the new Don Pedro Reservoir. But then as the water is delivered through pipelines to the Bay Area, you'll see a few other ones pointed out. Calaveras Reservoir and San Antonio Reservoir are in Alameda County. We have other reservoirs in your neck of the woods. Probably the one that everybody's familiar with is Crystal Springs, but there's another little reservoir called Pilocitos. So lots of reservoirs, lots of pipelines. One thing that I want you to think about is that it's gravity that allows us to move water from Hetchevchi all the way into our systems here in San Mateo County and beyond, up into San Francisco. So there's not a whole lot of electricity required to move the water. There certainly is electricity required to treat water, but not to move it. And pumping, the cost of pumping or the electricity required to pump water is one of the big expenses or big energy drivers for the state. but I can say clearly we don't have to face that here in our neck of the woods. We're not one of these quote unquote high energy users. Transitioning to talk about what the future holds in terms of our region and the broader San Francisco regional water system from a water demand perspective. If you look at this graph here, kind of move that box so you can see it. Back in 1985 or 86, we were using about 252 million gallons of water per day. So I know if you're not an engineer, that quantity may not necessarily jive with you in terms of what it means, but that's a heck of a lot of water, 252. And over time, you can see there's been droughts and people behaved well during droughts. They cut their water use. So there was a big drought from 87 until 92, and you can see that water use dropped by almost 50 million gallons a day, a little bit greater than that. But then customer behavior went back a little bit to normal. People started using more water, and its peak water use in 2003 was 265. The most recent drought, and Kirsten was actually a Bosca board member during that time, our water use dropped again. More and more conservation was put into place and people were behaving well. And following that, we just finished a demand study, a water demand study, and we project that by 2045, we're going to hit close to 258 million gallons of water a day. And you might say, well, why are we growing water use compared to what we're showing in the past? Well, the main reason is the region's going to grow significantly. It's going to go from 1.8 million people right now to 2.5 million people by 2045. And those numbers were derived from the Association of Bay Area Governments. They do routine population projections, and their estimates, at least for the Bosca region, have been very, very close, very good. So we can hold water use lower by doing a lot of conservation. And so you see, if we weren't doing all these new conservation programs that we envision will be in place, we could be using a lot more water, maybe as much as 300 million gallons a day by 2045. So we're cutting back because we will need to do a lot more conservation. I saw one of the messages in the chat box, whereas, aside from the San Francisco regional water system water, where else will water supplies be coming from? And this pie chart shows where that's going to be coming from by 2045. A lot of use of groundwater. The northern part of the county does have a significant groundwater basin, so to speak. It's called the West Side Basin. That's up near South San Francisco and San Bruno. There's other places in the count or in the Bosca member agency area that has groundwater, specifically Santa Clara agencies have a good access to groundwater, and Alameda County Water District over in Alameda County has a good groundwater supply. But there's other sources. Recycled water, I think you're going to see become a greater and greater use within our member agencies. There's projects that are in place now, and there'll be expansion of those projects in the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of my slide set. So now I'll transition and talk about what's happening. Yes, California is in a very severe drought this year. This map is prepared by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and NOAA. This most recent one that I'm showing was released in a few days ago on June 17th. Earlier in the year, there was by no means as much red or dark brown, the exceptional drought areas. You can see the exceptional drought areas of California are growing larger and larger if you were looking at a projection of these maps. And it's dipping down into the Bay Area. Right now, San Mateo County is shown as in an extreme drought, not an exceptional drought. One thing that I wanted to let you know is that this particular map, because it was prepared by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, when you see these drought maps, a lot of them have a focus of plants and agricultural base. So this would, while it helps us understand we're in a drought, it's also used by farmers in terms of, how should they address, should they plant, certain types of crops. It's very useful for the farming communities to have this information as well. So what's happening within our water system, within the Hetchevchi system? And I'm going to slow down a little bit here as I go through these slides, because this is really of note for us here in San Mateo County. We're doing a lot better than the rest of the state. We've got a great system with the Hetchevchi Reservoir and our local reservoirs that help us through times like these droughts. So Hetchevchi Reservoir right now is at about 94% full. So we are by no means empty or half empty like you may hear about in terms of state reservoirs in the news. We're almost full. There isn't going to be any more water added. There's no more snow melt to add to the reservoir, but we're doing pretty good. Other reservoirs, the local reservoirs are listed here. I'll just list Crystal Springs. That's about 82% full. And if you added up the storage within our whole system, we're about 3/4 full. And normally, though, if it was a normal year, there'd actually be even more storage in our system. It would be almost 89% full. So we are lower than a normal year, but we're by no means empty. And so that helps us, for us as water agencies, in terms of the reliability of our supply this year. Rainfall, though, rainfall has been lower for this past water year. This record is through this month. We haven't had any rain in June. Historically, we don't get rain until October. So if you look at these bar charts, upcountry means up in the watershed where Hetchevchi is located. There was only 1 month, January, where there was more rain than what normally occurs. The rest of the months was lower. I should say precipitation, because in that case, a lot of it is snow up there. Normally they get 36 inches of rain, and this year they only got 18. Within the Bay Area, here where we live, the situation is similar. Normally they get about 27 inches of rain, and total as of now in June is a little lower than 12.5 inches. So again, we're getting similar to last year. We're not getting as much precipitation as we normally receive, and that has a big factor in terms of our reliability as we go forward into the future years if there is a drought. This is just another map that shows the precipitation totals over the last few months. That solid red line towards the bottom is what we have to date. And you can see that solid black line that's kind of in the middle of this chart. That's the normal rainfall that we get up at Hetchevchi. You can see the red line's well below the black line. The thing I wanted to point out, many of you might have been around back in 1976 and 77. 1977 is the driest year of record for almost any water body in the state of California. You can see that red line for this year is very close to the driest year of record, is very close to that 1977 line. So it's the second driest year in our system. And if you looked at other rivers in the state, such as the McCollum River, which serves the East Bay, it's a similar situation. So we are having a historically dry year, and that is weighing heavily on the state of California. Snow melt, and I could also kind of say this is what we might see in the future relative to climate change. Up in the Hetchevchi Basin, you can see the black line. That's normally what we get in terms of snowfall, and then snow melt that comes into the Hetchevchi Reservoir. Normally, you'll continue to get snow and snow melt until about the April time frame, and then the snow will start thawing and melting into the reservoirs. What we saw this year is significantly less than normal. So in the future, if climate change occurs, that might become a thing that we'll have to expect moving forward. But right now, all the snow is melted. That red line shows that we've got all the storage we're going to get in the reservoir. We're not going to get any more. So this is kind of a busy map, and I apologize for this, but I wanted to now compare what we're facing versus the rest of the state, or a good part of the state. So there's a lot of reservoirs that are shown in graphic depictions off to the right of this slide. And I'll point out a couple of them. Lake Shasta, that's the largest reservoir in California. Lake Shasta is owned and operated by the federal government, the Bureau of Reclamation. And I put some information off to the right. So Lake Shasta is about 40% full. So it is far down. And if you were driving along I-5 and heading up to Oregon, it would be in, you know, you'd visually see it. It might appear empty. There's still water in it, but it is significantly low. And you can say the same for pretty much every one of either the federal government's reservoirs, the Bureau of Reclamations, or the state of California reservoirs, the State Water Project reservoirs. Lake Oroville, the dam that had that horrible spillway failure a few years ago, that's at 35% full. And why is this a big concern? Well, these reservoirs, while they don't necessarily serve us in terms of our San Francisco system, they serve a lot of other water agencies in the state. Metropolitan Water District relies on them, and I could name pretty much any agency in Sacramento that rely on them. Another agency that's nearby to us, and I'll talk about that in a second, is Valley Water, or Santa Clara Valley Water District. They have contracts with the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. So their situation is different than ours because the reservoirs that they rely on are significantly low compared to Hetchevchi. So that kind of transitions into what's happening with our neighbor, Santa Clara Valley Water District. You might have heard in the news that Valley Water has declared a water shortage emergency. So they, as an agency, did that declaration a couple of weeks back. And they're asking customers in Santa Clara County to cut back their water use by 15%. So that's a mandatory cutback that they're calling for. And so the handful of BOSCA agencies that are within Santa Clara County do have to cut back by that much. Tuesday, the Santa Clara County's Board of Supervisors declared a local emergency relative to drought. And so why did they do that? Well, Valley Water had basically been pressing them to. They have, again, a different water supply condition within Santa Clara County, and that action was needed. Now, the state has yet to declare Santa Clara County as one of those emergency counties that was part of that quiz we took earlier. But by doing this declaration, it's going to put pressure on the state to add Santa Clara County to that list. So what other things are unique aside from the fact that Valley Water relies on those State Water Project or Central Valley Project supplies? Anderson Dam, which is their largest reservoir, and I've got some photos off to the side, has some seismic issues. It's got some structural problems with it. And Valley Water hasn't done repairs to that dam as of yet. And the state came in and they said, listen, it's a hazard. If it failed during a flooding event or during some sort of a large runoff type event, you could cause major damage downstream, even loss of life. And so they ordered Valley Water to drain that reservoir. And it will stay drained for about 10 years because that's how long it's going to take to do the repairs and to rebuild it. So that's a big chunk of their supply that just got knocked out. And essentially what Valley Water has done, aside from declaring this drought emergency and requiring rationing, is they're ramping up their conservation efforts, and they're doing a lot of aggressive moves in terms of buying water on the market, water transfer water. So again, your neighbor is going to be in the news. And I wanted to just kind of draw the distinction between what's happening in San Mateo County and with San Francisco supplies with what's happening in Santa Clara, because sometimes it can get confusing when you hear that your water supplier is doing these things if you don't necessarily recognize that one's San Francisco and one's Valley Water. So in San Francisco and within our region, they're asking for something a bit different. We're basically asking that customers hold their water use to no greater than what was being used in 2019. And that was pre-pandemic. That's why they chose that year. And mostly it's summertime water use that we're asking to be controlled, so to speak. It's a voluntary call. It's not a mandatory, so there's no financial fines or anything associated with not meeting that, but we do, or San Francisco always has the ability to ramp this up if for some reason people aren't behaving well in terms of conserving water. The most effective way to hold your water use back is to deal with outdoor watering. So what BOSCA is messaging, and you'll start to see this on billboards, is to trim back your outdoor watering. Do it 2 to 3 times a week instead of every night or every day. do it during cool hours, so later at night or very early in the morning. Also consider turf replacement. We call it Lawn Begone, which is a program that Bosca has. That's a great opportunity to take out grass lawns and put in something that's more drought tolerant and still very aesthetically pleasing. And the rebates can help offset some of the costs. And of course, don't use water to wash your driveways or to clean paved surfaces. Use a broom. This water is very precious, and we have to manage it well. Last time we had a drought in 2015, our customers behaved very admirably. I won't go through all of these little bar charts, but you'll have access to my presentation as a follow-up to this. You can look and see where you live and see how your neighborhood or your city behaved. Essentially, there was a call to ration. It was a voluntary call. There wasn't anything quote unquote mandatory about it. And customers behaved very well. In 2015, they cut their water use by almost 27% compared to what they were using before the drought in 2013. So again, that's an average across the board. You can look at all the cities, and basically everybody was good about using less water. If you want to find out more about our conservations that we offer through Bosca and the member agencies that Bosca serves, we've updated our website now, so it's live. You can go onto it and you can navigate it to the drought page. And from there, you can look and see what rebates are available within your particular community. You hold your cursor over whatever colored block. You can see San Mateo off to the left is labeled, but you can hold your cursor over it. It'll show which city that is. You click it and it'll take you to show all the rebate programs that are available. There's another element. We have this water conservation program portal, which allows any resident to basically put in create a username and password, and then there's all sorts of different things that they can sign up for, whether it's classes or rebates or other opportunities that Bosca has available for all of us to conserve water. I'm talking here about a couple of rebate programs, and I know this text is pretty small, but we have a rain barrel rebate program for people that are willing to put in rain barrels to capture, basically rainfall. Now, granted, there may not be any rain this summer, but if we do have a freak storm, those are great to have. The Lawn Begone rebate, I think that's something that everybody should consider if you have a grass lawn. Smart controllers, if you have an irrigation system, there's a way that you can get money back if you want to install a smart controller. And we have a new program for irrigation hardware. You can basically get a lot of rebates if you replace your sprinkler nozzles or rotors that might be in place. Now is a good time to do it. If you have an older system in place, they may not be as water wise as some of these new units are. A couple of other programs Bosca has. Education programs. We have things that will allow you to get your home water use information. School programs for the kids and the high schoolers that will teach them about how to use water wisely. Of courses, and those have been really popular through COVID. We've just finished our spring courses. We're planning for the fall. Landscape classes and landscape audits as well that we're performing, as well as garden tours that are always popular. So again, there's a wealth of opportunities for members of the public to participate. Not all of our agencies take part in every one of our programs, but most have at least more than a handful of these conservation programs that they sign up for through Bosca. I do have this little chart about Cal Water because some of you live within a city that's served by Cal Water, who's a private utility. They don't necessarily participate in Bosca's conservation programs. They have their own. I won't go through this list, but they have similar rebates for toilets and clothes washers, and they're also starting up in July a turf replacement rebate that's similar to Lawn Begone. So again, I encourage you, if you live in San Mateo or what we call kind of the Bear Gulch area or up in South San Francisco, that you visit Cal Water's website and take advantage of their conservation programs. So the last part of my presentation, I wanted to talk about what we're doing at Bosca to look forward in the future about how we're going to address the need for water during droughts. And there's reasons why we need to do this. I know that there's a lot of you that might consider yourselves members of the environmental community, which would like to see more water left in the Tuolumne River for fishery needs and other habitat purposes. If we take water from, or if we keep water in the river, then we need to find other sources of water during droughts to meet our needs, our water supply needs during those times. And those projects are a mix of opportunities. The ones that I think, at least in my view, are I support highly are water reuse. And so there's 3 projects that I'm showing here. Daly City project is up in the peninsula, the north part. We're working with the city of Daly City to expand their wastewater treatment plant and their recycled water operations at that plant. And the idea is to build a pipeline from those expanded facilities such that we can take some of the cemeteries that are up in Colma and put them on recycled water. Right now, those cemeteries use groundwater for their watering needs. And if we keep that groundwater in the basin, there is a groundwater project that San Francisco operates up in that part of the peninsula that would be used during times of drought. And keeping that groundwater basin as full as possible is really important. And so that recycled water work would be very, very beneficial. Sort of these new ideas, and these are things that maybe you as an interested stakeholder could support as we bring them forward. There's this Crystal Springs Purified Water Project. And so there's 2 wastewater plants. One is owned by the city of San Mateo, and the other one is the Silicon Valley Clean Water is what they call them, but it's another wastewater plant. Would be to take basically the wastewater that's generated from those 2 wastewater facilities, treat it to drinking water level. So it would be high quality water following that treatment. And instead of discharging it to the bay, actually use that drinking water now to meet our water supply needs. That water would either be just directly put into the distribution system, or the other option is to send it to Crystal Springs Reservoir, where it would mix with the Hetchy supplies that are quote unquote parked there, and then stay there for a certain time. And following that time, it would be extracted again from Crystal Springs Reservoir and sent through the Harry Tracy treatment plant. So again, I see that as kind of the future for our region and a lot of the West. We've got the technology. We know that it can be done in a way that protects health. And the idea is to take that water and make it drinking water quality. There's a similar project called the Alameda County Water District Union Sanitary District Purified Water over on the Alameda County side of San Francisco's regional water system. That is a similar type project, which would take wastewater and create drinking water from it. And then that could offset the supplies that we would need during a drought from Hetchevchi. A couple of other projects, I won't spend too much time talking about them. Expanding surface storage. There's a large reservoir called Las Vaqueras Reservoir that's owned by Contra Costa Water District over in Contra Costa County. It's a big regional project where many water agencies in the Bay Area are partnering on it to expand that reservoir. That storage that would be created would be used to fill that reservoir during wet periods and use that extra storage during dry periods of the year to meet not just the needs of the San Francisco water system, but also a number of other water agencies such as East Bay Mud, Zone 7 Water Agency. The list goes on. So there's a lot of partners in that, but it's a project that has a lot of opportunity. Calaveras Dam, I showed you that picture earlier on. We're looking at expanding that storage in that reservoir as well. And last but not least, desalination. There's a project that potentially could happen sort of right where the delta ends and the bay begins. It's been studied for many years. There'd be many partners in it. I do think that there's a possibility that one day it could move forward, but there are a lot of environmental interests that would be opposed to desalination. So while it's being studied, I do know that there's, it has a lot more unlikelihood, so to speak, of moving forward if those interest groups wouldn't come around and support it, and they have reasons why they may not want to do that. Just in terms of how long it would take to get any of those projects that I just discussed built and in place, it would take a long time. Right now, all of them are essentially in the planning stage. The Daly City Recycled Water Project, that could be put in place by 2030. And that's pretty far along. It's almost going to engineering design. The Las Vegas Reservoir Project, the one in Contra Costa County, that also is pretty far along. It's in the design stage, and that could be built by 2030. But all the other ones, it's going to take at least until 2040 or even beyond to put them in place. So these aren't necessarily quick fix projects. They're in the planning stage. Water supply projects take a long time to build. So I'm going to close out this screen and just say I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. It's an important time for all of us to think about water supply and conservation. And you know, I can't say this is a quiz, but one time watering your lawn is like doing 16 loads of laundry. So think about that next time you turn your sprinklers on. And I will stop my share and turn it back to questions.
Well, that is fabulous. And Tom, you've really given us a lot to think about. I know it is 6:14. I think we could do some breakouts. We posted our breakout questions in the chat. Maybe we could do a quick less than 10-minute breakout and then come back as a group, or we can stay together and ask a couple of these questions. You know, I think I'm looking at our second question about how can we encourage our building departments to support more gray water ordinances and work with businesses. I think really a lot of that has to happen at city council levels, where there have to be changes to demand it, that new buildings have to have this built in, the net zero water buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, what do you have to say about that?
I agree. You know, Kirsten, one of the things that we can do at BOSCA, and we've been talking to our member agencies, is to help develop ordinances if there needs to be new ordinances on those type of things, and then share it with those, you know, cities, so to speak, those councils, so that we can, you know, help jumpstart it if they're interested. But you're right. It does have to come, you know, kind of to those councils, and there has to be that incentive.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear, you know, that's something BOSCA is working on. I really like it when either San Mateo County, you know, our Board of Supervisors or BOSCA, for example, can come up with a sample ordinance, because it makes it that much easier for each city, because we have so many cities, mm-hmm. right? We have, you know, 20 cities to work with and the county. And so when the county takes on something like that too, and does the draft to make it something that we can all work with and not reinvent the wheel, that's super helpful. So I would really encourage that, because I think as we move forward, we really do need net zero water use buildings. It just has to be the plan.
Agree with that.
So Christine, do you want to break us out into groups for just a few minutes so we can talk about, I think it's nice to break out so everybody can talk in their group. So yeah, maybe we can break it for 6 minutes and then come back in together.
Yeah, so let's plan 6 minutes, and I would focus on question 1, since you already addressed a little bit the other one. So let me see if we can.
And everybody can look in our chat to see those two questions.
So basically, I mean, it's what you can do to save water, and what are the top 3 water saving strategies you will prioritize. And if you can share resources, ideas, solution, again, we are all about solutions. So that would be the focus. So I think with that, I'm just going to open the breakout rooms. Perfect. And then I'll bring you back at around 6:23.
Perfect.